So what can you learn from an astrology reading? How does the universe work in general and very specifically as you? How much is karma and how much is destiny? Will astrology predict your future, be empowering or disempowering? I'll talk about these things in this video. So I'm going to talk about what we can learn from an astrology reading and why to get an astrology reading and really how astrology readings work. What's really going on when you get a reading? And, I want to just let you know that I talk to a lot of astrology students, a lot of astrology teachers, people that want readings, people that want to learn how to do readings. And in many ways, we kind of lose sight of what we're actually even doing as an astrologer or as a student. And I've been getting a lot of questions about that lately from students and whatnot. So, the first thing is we want to understand that when an astrologer does a reading, in many ways, they're kind of taking their worldview and using how they understand the universe astrologically and using that to interpret their kind of vision of the world, so to speak. And of course, you want to see that their vision lines up with yours, at least, for example, if someone, let's say, is a Christian and you're not, and astrology is all around Christianity, maybe that's not going to work. But in a general sense, what you want to know is that the first thing is that an astrologer is kind of sharing their worldview, their universal view. This is why, like, if you see someone who's done yoga for a long time or practiced a long time, done things in ways that you have or wish you had, they would be a good place to start as an astrologer or an astrology teacher for you. And, we've all gone through an evolution. Nobody arrives at astrology or doing readings or even studying it or being interested in it just as a matter of sort of, happenstance. Of course, it's more likely like in India or in Eastern cultures because it's more part of the culture, but we all kind of go through some kind of change in order to arrive, to be looking at the astrology and the universe itself as the great sort of answer to our, deeper questions. So like with myself, I started in a very kind of rural situation where I was literally raised in the backwoods, of Maryland in the United States. I didn't have any relationship or training in anything metaphysical or cosmic, not even religious. And, that kind of left me very open. It wasn't so much that it was negative that I didn't get any guidance, because I didn't get any guidance for or against. If there was anything that was against, but it was against religion, but it wasn't against belief or against life. It was against stupid, worshiping or something like that. So we weren't raised in any kind of faith-inspired way. So it was a very open equation for me. So when I started, it was as I grew in life, I didn't have any preconceptions, and I mainly was like everybody else. Well, I guess we're here to, enjoy life and have fun or something. And then very early, though, I had a tendency for meditation and to understand that Indian mysticism and metaphysics was the answer. And so when I started meditating very early, when I was not even 20 years old, and what got into very deep meditation, something was triggered in me. Then years later, I've discovered the Vedic astrology, and it explained all of those states of awareness and all of those things that I had been studying decades earlier. So one of the most important things that you get from a reading, it has to do with things like, what is the universe? How does the universe work? What is karma? How much of my life is related to my karma. First, what is karma? And how does all of that work? How much do I get to determine and how much is already predetermined, predestined? And of course, that answer and how an astrologer answers that is very important. What do astrologers think of this, of this worldview? Are they of the idea that when they look at your chart, they're looking at the idea that, well, there are certain energies that are going to punish you and certain are going to reward you. Punishments and rewards, that's kind of what's going on. There are some who think that. And again, that's not uncommon. Saturn and the nodes and Mars, they're the ones that are difficult because you have some difficult karma, so you've got to go through the sort of punishment of Saturn, but then you've got to endure it. You got to go through that blow-ups of Mars, but then the good ones come. Jupiter comes and gives you grace, and this one comes and makes you happy. So it's happy and bad, happy, sad. That's a way of looking at it. There are others. I don't really look at it that way. Because of my nature and my worldview, and just what's natural to me is I see it all as the different facets of the Divine Mother energy. And just like the mother might prevent you from doing something that you might not like in the moment, which is Saturn, we don't always see the bigger picture. We don't often see the bigger picture and don't understand how not getting something or being prevented from getting something or being even sort of punished, if you want to use that term, for doing something wrong is actually a benefit. There are certain lessons that we won't learn until we suffer, and those are shown by Saturn. There are other lessons we can learn very easily. Those are shown maybe by Venus and Mercury or by Jupiter, that we learn as we get something, not as we're prevented from getting something, for example. So it's all very open. So when you want to understand this universal view, that's very important. So finding an astrologer or finding readings or finding teachings and classes that support this will be important. Now, when you're getting a reading, of course, when someone's giving you a reading, they're explaining your karma. But again, what is karma? And, is it about the stuff that's destined to happen? Like this is going to happen and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, there's certainly merit to that. There's certainly ways to predict things that are going to happen that you have no control over. But again, things like that are often not very empowering, and astrologers can say things like this and be wrong because it's very hard to predict exactly what someone will do, simply because we're all in the moment. We're all living in the moment with what you would maybe call free will. I actually call it presence, because free will is often something that's very egoistic. But especially making a creative choice, we can always make a higher, more creative and enlightened choice. And often this is put into the category when astrologers say, oh, they did something that's not in the chart. Because of God's grace, they did something not in the chart. And this is grace that's not in the chart. That's not a part of astrology. All of that's wrong. Astrology shows all of it, including the grace and the grace of the planet that's difficult to operate in a high manner in specific situations. All of it's there. So this whole kind of thing that obviously, honestly, I would say that astrologers who haven't researched enough maybe have to look more into are shown by these kinds of disconnects. They say, well, everything's not in the chart. There are things you do that's not in the chart. And yes, it's all in the chart. But making a prediction about what someone would do and then saying, well, the reason I got the prediction wrong is because they did something that's not in the chart. That's not true. You just got the prediction wrong. So this is why often, now I definitely make predictions when I do readings, but the predictions I make are pretty much always right because I'm predicting what's happening and why it's happening and what's the choices that the person is grappling with. That's always going to be correct if you understand it, if you understand how to read it that way. I'm never wrong about those things because it's very clear for me to see, here's exactly what's happening. And here's exactly why. And here's exactly that part of you that is coming into action right now, because there are several different levels when you're reading the chart. You're reading the overall nature of the person, of course, based on very specific things, but then you're also reading those specific tendencies at different moments in time, different points in time. Like I have a general nature. I have a Gemini rising with Mercury, Venus, Sun, and Rahu all in Gemini in the first house. That's just my general nature. Mars in the third house, Moon in the fifth house, Saturn in the eighth house, Jupiter in the 10th house. That's just my general nature. Okay, and it's a kind of mixture. But then you go into different dasha cycles. Now this thing is being focused on more, right? So you take a certain part of that general nature. Yeah, I just mentioned the birth chart. There's also harmonic charts. There's so many different ways to drill down into the nakshatras and the houses and the rulerships. All that stuff is the general nature, but then we have moments in time, that moment in time when you're getting the reading to say, okay, now it's this part of your general nature that's being activated right now, and we're going to look at that today. And so that's, of course, a more focused laser approach to reading a chart and giving a good astrology reading at a moment in time, rather than, well, just in general. And this really trips a lot of students up because for example, I'll just say my chart for as an example, I have Jupiter in the 10th house, right? And it's Pisces, which is its ruler, right? It's the ruler. So the 10th house ruler in the 10th house, someone would say, boy, you'll have a great career. Yeah, eventually, like now, but if they would have read my chart when I was 25, they wouldn't have said that, or 35, they wouldn't have said that, because I wasn't running the dasha yet. So again, this is what really trips a lot of students up. They're like, wow. And I'll see professional astrologers have these kind of conversations. How do you account for the fact that they had this great Jupiter in the 10th house, 10th lord in the 10th house, yet they never had a good career? Go back and look at the dashas and you see that it never lined up to where that planet, which is that part of the person, became featured or became the main driving force in their life. They maybe got a dasha, a whole sequence of dashas that didn't bring that out. It's still a part of who the person is, but it doesn't come to fruition. So this often shows things that are frustrated in us, the frustrations that we might have, like a lot of ambition, but we never get put in the place to express it or something like that. So these are the kinds of things, like when you learn how to do readings, or if you're studying, trying to understand these nuances are very important. And we have different inherent capacities for relationships. We would look at Venus, the Karaka. You always look at the indicator or the Karaka. Then the house ruler, then the house itself, like the 7th house. So it'd be like Venus, then the 7th house ruler, then the 7th house. Then the harmonic chart. It's like 4 things. For career, it's mainly the Karaka, which is the Sun and or Saturn, then the 10th house ruler in the chart, then the 10th harmonic chart, and then the 10th house. Like I said, I have Jupiter in the 10th. If it's other things like children, it's, Jupiter is the ruler. I'm sorry, Jupiter's the Karaka, then the 5th house ruler, then the 5th house, then the 7th harmonic chart. So again, these are all kind of ways that you do readings, and ways that an astrologer should approach doing a reading, and people who are looking to get readings should expect. And often there's a lot of false expectations or not very good expectations when someone even gets a reading. Sometimes people approach astrologers wanting them to just predict their whole life, as if that's what they even really want. Because again, I could predict somebody's whole life if I thought it was helpful. But what winds up happening is, many times people don't really want you to predict honestly. They want you to tell them they're going to get what they want. That's a different thing. So you can always tell people, when you understand what you're reading, be very real and honest about all the possibilities and the open choices that are in front of a person. Because again, that's how doing an astrology reading and understanding astrology in general and studying it can really help you. It's not going to be this thing that solves all your problems, so to speak. It's going to let you see who you really are, why you're actually motivated the way you are, your inherent strengths, your inherent obstructions, where you are at any given moment in that process, how to get the most out of it and make the most creative choice and avoid the difficult choice. And it helps you understand that all of the energies are benevolent. They're all good. There's nothing, no planetary force that's trying to hurt you. They're all, as I said, different facets of the Divine Mother. We don't always understand the Mother's working, though. Think of when you were a child and you wanted to just eat candy for dinner, and your mother would say, no, you can't just eat candy, you're going to get sick. And you would scream and cry. And eventually she would say, okay, go ahead and eat all the candy and get sick. That's the only way you're going to learn, so go ahead. And then that's how you learned. Some things we only learn by making the mistake. And the Mother will let us make the mistake as well. So, but all of it is divine grace. And so I was just compelled to make this video because I'm just thinking about it because I'm getting a lot of questions about it. And I also have classes. I also have a whole course that I taught several years ago on how to give a great consultation. It's called Great Consultation Course. You know, people can check that out if they want as well. But it's very important to understand what you're going to be doing when you give astrology readings or if you're getting one. So I hope this was helpful for you to hear.